Doug is, when he's not managing a remote security operations center and teaching at Virginia Western Community College, he spends his free time with his family. I'm really looking forward to today's event. So I'm going to pop this over to Doug. It's all yours. Take it away, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, B. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so thanks for the intro, B. And yeah, this is when I was presented this opportunity, I wanted to jump on it because I know for those of you who have had me in our face-to-face class, I like talking about how you can help prepare yourself for the job search and the steps beyond. So let's go ahead and jump in. First, I want to start off with 3 major tips. We'll see these in the upcoming slides as well. The first tip is network. Like I said, network and network. Meeting people is key, whether it's virtual or in person. The old mantra of it's not what you can do, it's who you know. Yeah, that's somewhat true. That only gets you so far, though, and we all know that. Make yourself and your resume stand out. This is key because, I'm not going to lie, it's been a long time since I've been on the, job hunting side, but I know from the, the interviewer and the hiring manager side, I'm going to give out some tips on just what we do from that front, but tips to help you stand out and your resume, because that is the piece of you that, the recruiters and the interviewer sees. And then the other tip, the third tip, of course, is preparation is crucial. And this isn't just the preparation of, you getting dressed for an interview, setting up your resume to look nice and putting all the content in it. This is the, in my class, what I call the reconnaissance phase. This is where you are looking into the company that you are interviewing for. So let's go ahead and jump into the next slide. So when I say networking, I'm not just going to read down the slide, but I did put a lot of stuff in here for you to look at and also review. When I spoke with our recruiters, because I got some tips from them as well, they said that, networking is key. How you network and the people you meet is also very important. So I wanted to give out some, at least some information on clubs and events in the area. We've got the Virginia Western Community College Computer Science Club. Last year, they came out on #1 for the Radford's Are You Secure Capture the Flag event, which is awesome and a great achievement. A professional club that we have in the area is the Roanoke InfoSec Exchange. Now, this particular group, they're primarily focused on information security, but you also have people from other aspects or other positions and companies within Roanoke. So I know pre-COVID, we would get together once a month and we, present on various cases that we would either, like to showcase, like talk about and how we secure this and how we, lock down this or have a capture the flag event, fun stuff, and a great environment to get to mingle with others in the area. Career fairs are definitely key. You're getting out there. Again, pre-COVID, you were, the typical getting ready for a career fair. You've got a case, a notebook that is holding all the many copies of your resume, and you're going to booth to booth to booth. Well, now it's, virtual. So even the virtual career fairs they still have booths, believe it or not, virtual booths. And, the interviewer is presented, or the recruiter is presented with your resume as you enter the booth. And, you have a discussion about your past experience and what you want to do and what you know about the company, and how do you plan to further your career, especially in IT or in computer science. So there are some other groups, the Association for Computing Machinery, as well as IEEE, or the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. These are two worldwide large groups online. They do, however, have memberships or dues. I know for ACM, it's like $32 a year for their membership. I'm sorry, for our IEEE, it's $32 a year. ACM is $19 a year. You get, with your student membership, you get access to just tons of information, especially not just with I like to focus on the information security aspect, but it's electrical engineering, it's mechanical engineering, all sorts of just various topics within the field of not just IT, but just overall science in general. And of course, engineering. Another tip, especially with networking, is jumping on internships. If an internship presents itself, whether it's from somebody or from a professor, jump on it, get some more information. What's required? How do I apply for that internship? Internships get you that information, the experience, and allows you to learn while you're getting that experience within a corporate environment. So it is, internships are key, especially, if you can manage that while you're in school. So yeah, internships. The other one, so social media, I have here LinkedIn, because to be honest, it is one of the more appropriate ones for, growing and extending your professional network. A lot of you may have Instagram, that's fine. Twitter is good for following other professionals in the field, getting information, but I wouldn't necessarily put my resume out on my Twitter feed. But using LinkedIn, it is specifically scoped to get you out there in front of recruiters that, believe it or not, they do scour LinkedIn, as well as other companies too. And you still get a ton of information from companies by following them within LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is great to focus on, your professional network. And then the other thing is maintaining your relationships. When you participate in groups, when you're working alongside other peers, working on projects, keeping those, you never know where they might go. And you might find out that your friend is working at this company and you say, hey, but I want to work there too. And you might see that there's a position open. Well, the thing is that employee referrals tend to come off, they tend to go a little further just by being an employee referral, because the recruiter is taking the account that, well, the person who's handing us this resume, that they know they're vetting this person to some degree, rather than just the recruiter pulling your resume off of a job post online. So maintain those relationships. I have on here that professors are contacted by the recruiters for recommendations. I know I've had plenty of students, hey, Mr. Anderson, I'm going for this job, and can I put you down as a reference, for my class and the projects that I worked on? And I definitely say yes. So remember these key components to networking as you move forward with the job hunt. Let's see. Another thing that I like to say, especially to students in IT and just overall peers in IT, is to continue on working on those soft skills, gauging your audience, being able to speak to the audience and being able to speak to what you know, especially when we're coming from the technical side. We love to throw in all the, the technical jargon. We know what we know at the technical level. And if you get us, if you're not technical and you walk upon somebody who's having a technical conversation, it can be hard to follow. Now, when you're talking with an audience and you have to explain that technical aspect of what you do, but you can talk to it so that they can understand, that is great. When a recruiter is trying to, when they're interviewing you on the phone or in person, you don't want them to have to like pull information out of you. You want to be able to, have a good conversation to where it doesn't even feel like an interview. It almost feels like a conversation pretty much. So doing that, like continuing to hone on the customer service and conversation skills. I've taken jobs prior to being in IT as I would work with tour groups and guiding customers, and I'm the face of the company in front of customers talking to them, and I love doing it. I just like doing technical stuff a lot more, but it helped with being able to stand in front of people and talk to a certain degree what needs to be done. Your behaviors, personality are key. I'm always, you'll hear me say are key so much. A lot of these tips that I give are, just they fit in so well with moving forward in the job hunt. But the way that companies operate, they say it's it's part, the deliverables that we make, the products that we sell or ship out. But a big aspect of that is the cultural, just the cultural environment within those companies. So, the recruiters, the interviewers, they want to see, are you a good fit? How do you have, are you going to outburst in anger or get frustrated easily? Those are kind of things that you want to be cognizant about when you're looking at some of these jobs, because I'm going to tell you, anyone in IT will tell you there are some very frustrating and just hair pulling times. But we must remain composed throughout the interview and throughout our career. The next point that I have here that I like to drive to students is, as the interviewer and the hiring manager, I know I've asked the question, I look at the resume and they say, and I'm talking from when I'm looking at cybersecurity resumes, and they may say in their resume, oh yeah, I took a class in this, and I took a cybersecurity class at this school. I'm like, okay, so tell me about some of the projects or the work that you did in the class. Tell me what was the most challenging project. What was a project that you had so much fun on that you just felt compelled to dig down into that rabbit hole. And I've been shocked where I hear like, I really can't remember, what we learned, what we talked about, what we did. And, when I see that you're taking a class last semester or last year, and, it hurts a little bit. But you want to be able to say, oh yeah, I did this project. It had, X, Y, and Z. We ran into this problem, or my group ran into this problem. I ran into this problem. Our professors helped out, or, we got to show our professor this with this project. You want to make sure that you keep those previous projects in mind, because like when you're doing the interview part, it's part of the conversation that you can have. And it shows that, well, it's also just much better than, oh, well, I just got out of school and I haven't, had a professional career yet. And it's like, well, no, but you had experience in some aspect of the professional field in IT. It's, if you've done vulnerability scanning, like in ITN 261, you could talk to that, because that is an industry process, So remember the things that you learned in your class, because you'll want to pull out some of those parts that you can talk through in your interview. And also, you know, if you have a separate project, put that project down that you've been working on. The next one, yep, pursuing industry certifications. I mean, you know, they're big. And I know they're scary because you can ask 100 different people, what cert should you go for while you're in school if you have no certs? What should I start out with? And everyone's going to tell you something different. But my advice is that, you know, if you're in looking for a job in cybersecurity, look for the certifications that, you know, that will help get you that job in cybersecurity. I've talked to like our lead developers at 1901 Group, and I said, hey, you know, what kind of certifications are you looking for from a student that's coming out of, you know, or a new employee or a new hire for, you know, with certifications? And, you know, some of the answers I got were, well, you know, it's not about certifications in the development side. It's mainly about, you know, what languages can they speak to, you know, Python, Perl, Java. Can you speak to it? Can you speak to the foundations of, you know, doing those programming? But also but I was told that, you know, there are other certs, you know, like, can they get like cloud certs, things like that, you know, not a specific programming cert, but more of a certification in IT that, you know, that is where IT is headed. You know, companies are moving their workloads to the cloud. Hey, let's jump on that. And I do have a slide where, you know, it's a shameful plug where I talk to cybersecurity certs, but it still talks to the foundational certifications that you should look at. So in my class, my students, they ask, Doug, what should I go for? You know, I want to go for the sweet, juicy hacker cert. I tell them start with the basics. You know, the CompTIA Network, A+, Security Plus. They're wonderful. They look good on a resume, especially when you're coming from, you know, coming out of school. And reach out to the professors at Virginia Western. You know, I know Virginia Western can help out our students with getting those certifications. And I briefly touched on expanding on your assigned research and projects. What the professors, what the faculty members, what we give you at Virginia Western in your course, that is the like one of the first steps that you get into the industry. You know, you're touching the environments, you're touching the kind of processes, and just the overall technology that is actually used in the industry. You know, the Cisco devices and, you know, networking, all of that stuff. Dig into it, you know, find your niche. If you really enjoy, you know, networking and you want to, you know, develop your own homegrown network, do it. And then you can talk to it. You'll identify some of the pitfalls. It's amazing. And it sounds good when you're talking through it. You talk about the challenge that you had and how you overcame it. So, you know, those achievements, showcase them. Don't be afraid to, you know, don't hide them. Just let them out, you know, especially on your resume and on your phone call or, you know, your first talk with the recruiter. Make them remember you. So this is the shameful plug that I would say. Now, this is the approved baseline certifications that I follow, that, you know, my team follows at 1901 Group, and that, well, it follows a Department of Defense Directive 8570. So it talks to the varying levels of, you know, information assurance technical, you know, so you got level 1, which is like the foundational, you know, the beginners. You have the level 2 and the level 3, and you have the alphabet soup of certifications that are available to you, or that they look for. So it's like, okay, so if I wanted to get into the technical level 1, and granted this is, you know, within DoD, but, you know, there are companies in the area that contract with government, and they still follow this kind of baseline. You know, so having something like the A+, Network Plus, even Security Plus. Yeah, people, for some reason say, oh, those are the basic ones. Yeah, and those are the ones to go for. You're already learning this kind of stuff in school. You just have to, either crack open a book or, just look up some more and dig into it, research, and knock it out. I mean, you're in a perfect position at Virginia Western to study for these certs and knock them out. Below that, you have the information assurance management. So these basically look at what kind of certifications should you have, to be considered for those specific levels. Below that is the information assurance security, architecture, and engineering. I know that's a whole lot, and those certs are not easy, but this gives the path of where can I go and how can I further my career. And I'm sorry, but this is specific within cybersecurity pretty much. And then the CSSP, that's a cybersecurity service provider. So, a lot of companies follow this similar process or path when they say, hey, you know what, let's put up this job posting. And when you see that, certifications desired or required, you may see these, whether it's the A+, just all these certifications out there. But this is to help guide as to why. So why would they need these kinds of certs to be listed on the job post? Well, so that, they can fulfill requirements that they may need to, may be held to with the staff that they're bringing on. Plus, when you have those certifications, like the A+, the Security Plus, Network Plus, it shows that you have the foundational knowledge of what it takes, and you'll be able to at least keep up and speak with, the other people on the team, whether they're more senior or on the same level. Plus, I'm not going to lie, it's also a good talking point when you're talking about, what was your process of studying for those certifications, and how it's not about just having it, but, sometimes I like to ask, what was your process to study, and how did you keep organized with school and getting that done? Because gaining a certification is more like an extracurricular activity, but it's definitely worth it down the road. All right, so formatting your resume. When you're getting out there and you're applying for a job at whatever company, your resume may not make it directly to the hiring manager. A lot of times it's going to go directly to a recruiter. The recruiter may not be specific to that field that you're applying for. So they may look at things like, okay, and I was actually told that, yeah, they look at things like, is your resume organized? Do you follow a consistent pattern for how you list out your previous experience, where you've worked? How long have you worked there? Things like that. Because it shows that you are organized yourself. I mean, because your resume is that extension of you, that it's like that first impression before the first impression, if you will. Because that's what they're going to look at to gauge, okay, should we move this candidate further? The next bullet point, targeting your resume for the position. That is very important because, like I said, recruiters are going to get that resume, and I know I've heard like stories of, yeah, they just put it through a scanner and it looks for buzzwords. You never know, that could be true. Recruiters get hundreds of resumes daily. So, whether they're scanned and there are, hey, this one matches, 88%, or, this will go over before, a resume that matches, 60%. But, whether it's scanned, by a machine or scanned by a person, they will look for, hey, we asked for experience in this, type of technology. Does it say that? No. Well, then, all right, that's a mark. We're going to keep going through, and they didn't have the kind of experience based on the resume that we were looking for. You don't want your resume to be passed up. So when you look at something and it says, you got to have experience in these types of technologies, if you have some experience in those technologies, good. Make sure they are listed on your resume, and make sure you can talk to it in detail on your resume. And your skill set on your resume. I have here that it's fair game. If your resume looks so good and the recruiter says, "Oh my goodness, this candidate," and they're holding up that resume, and you've got to talk to this person. Their resume looks so good, and anything on your resume is fair game to question by the not just by the recruiter, but also by the interviewers or hiring manager. So if you just stay true to what you know. And if you feel that you're at a beginner for a specific language, put that, like languages, Python, beginner or learning Python. If you just leave Python, you kind of leave it open to interpretation, like, so you must be a whiz with Python. Now remember, you may think you are, but if the recruiter or somebody asks detailed questions and, hey, give us some pseudocode, and you can't, well, I'm actually just learning it. Now it's like, well, you didn't say that. So make sure, your resume is true. Don't feel like, because you're only learning something that'll set you further back. It doesn't. It actually, it lets you come up with with a plan to talk about what you've done and what you've been learning. And two, it doesn't leave, your integrity in question. Your resume length, I know if I try to write out a resume of everything that I've done, it would be hard for me to keep mine at 2 pages with the amount of experience that I've had. But it is something that you do want to do. Keep it at 2 pages or less. 1 page is good, especially if you don't want to fill it up with fluff. You want it to be direct with the experience that you have, with what you can talk to, and also what you want to show off, and how that resume will lead you to the position that you want. You say, hey, this is what I've done, and this is how what I've done matches up with what the job is looking for. The last point here, I didn't think about this until recently, but limiting the number of job boards your resume is on. Believe it or not, like recruiters, they are tied in with so many different job boards, whether it's Indeed, Monster, the job board that the company is using, and they are all tying these positions. They throw them out there, so you'll see the same position on this job board, that job board, this job board. It's what I was told was, if you're applying for the same position in multiple job boards, you overdo it for the recruiter, and they just kind of feel like you may be desperate. And they're like, after you've applied at one place and if you notice that it's the same position on multiple boards, believe me, they've gotten it. And they've got their own ways of analyzing the resumes that are coming in, from which job boards they're coming in. It's almost like they just throw the net out there to see where they're coming in from. But if they get too many of the same resume, it may increase the chance of it being cast aside for other resumes to be reviewed. So remember, the key is, if you've noticed a job position on multiple boards, just go for the one board that is that you feel is appropriate. And my advice with actually posting your resume for a specific job position for a company, do it on the company's site. There's tons of other boards, like I said, Monster, Indeed, and all this other stuff. But if look at the company, and if they've got their own career board where you can apply, do it there. All right, so with preparation, this is my favorite part. When you're when you're applying for a company, it's just like the company is doing to you, right? You've got to look into the company. The company is already there. They've got their information out there. They're on the internet. You can search, and you will find tons of information. do your research on the companies. I know it's always told, and I've seen like where, you know, people have heard it and they're like, okay, yeah, I'll just look up the company and I know the name and I know what they sell or what they make or what, you know, things like that. But it's you'll want to do your research to, you know, so that you can lead that conversation as well when they ask at the end of the interview, or, you know, the recruiter at the end of the call, do you have any questions for me? That is your opportunity to show that you've done your research. You know, hey, so I've noticed on your site this, and I'm curious about that. Can you tell me more about what this company, you know, what you're doing with this product? Or, you know, can you tell me about more about the position? You know, just looking into what the company does and the position they're very important steps within the with the job hunt. Because like I said, lack of interest, lack of research shows lack of interest, and it shows you're not motivated. And if you're not motivated or interested enough to research the company, then what about other, you know, future projects that may come up? So alongside of that, generate the list of questions that you may be asked. I've seen people, you know, jump on they just get on Google and they say, hey, interview questions for this position. Good, do that. Because more than likely, you never know. The interviewer or the recruiter may ask you some of those very questions that are posted somewhere on the internet. And being able to talk to it and being prepared to talk to it, that you just feel more at ease when you're speaking in an interview about it. And yeah, generating the list of questions you have for the recruiter and for the hiring manager. Because like I said, one, it does show that you're interested, you're motivated. But I mean, you know, just like at an interview or what the recruiter is doing, they're asking you multiple questions because they want to see how good of a fit you are to the company. Well, you'll want to ask questions to see how good of a fit the company is to your personality, your individuality. You know, so you want to be able to, well, do I want to work there? Ask those kind of questions. I mean, don't ask, do I want to work here, guys? Because they're going to tell you, well, you're here for the interview. So you at least took the first step. We hope you would want to, if, you know, you wanted to take the time for the interview. But you want to ask, you know, the kinds of questions like, you know, how many people am I working with on a team? Is this you know, are there projects that, you know, I get to have input on? Especially when you're coming in at an entry-level position. A lot of the analyst positions, you know, processes may be laid out. Are there opportunities for me to improve upon existing processes within the position that is listed here? Those kinds of questions will help you gauge, you know, is the company going to be a good fit? Are they going to give you good, meaningful work? And either I spoke too fast or, well, I also have other references and information so that way we can take it to the questions after this. But so I quickly looked out there, you know, and unfortunately it seems like a lot of the like career fairs, they go on like right before or right as school starts. So I know the CAE had a virtual career fair on the 4th of this month, but like I say, look out for 2021. I know DHS is having their virtual career fair. I have information on the various groups, Roanoke InfoSec or RISE. They've got a meeting tomorrow where they're going to talk about securing virtual desktop environments. Got the links for ACM, IEEE, the certification baseline. You know, of course, we've got the upcoming CS Scholars program lectures. And then, so I also have cloud environments here. The beauty about these cloud environments and what I'm gonna stick to here is that, you know, I hate to make it sound like this, but I know when I was in school, like in my day, but when I was in school and I wanted to learn more or like do stuff, get more hands-on experience with some of the technology that we were learning in class, like I either had to wait until I could sign up for the class or, beg the person who managed the lab for, to watch over that equipment. Can I get in here? Can I have some time in here to work on these things? Because I know as a student, when I didn't have the funds to say, oh yeah, I'm gonna go out and buy me a router, buy me a switch, a managed router, managed switch, and just start going away at it and develop my own network. No, that just wasn't feasible at the time. But I have these links, to remind us all that, the cloud environments are out there. They have free tiers. They have tons of documentation to go along with them. Get in there, jump on those free tiers, build out your experience. That way you can talk to it. And if you want to expand further out past the free tier options, they're relatively cheap as far as hosting, various aspects of what you want to build out. So like learning things like, virtual private clouds, networking within the clouds, learning about systems within the clouds. I mean, and getting your hands on, what I think are like the three major players in the cloud environment. So I wanted to make sure that those were on here as well, because, I know we all don't have the means to be able to, have a bunch of equipment running at our house. And, especially now with, in our current situation with COVID, it's not like we can go into the labs, I know Jeff Scott, I know you all know Jeff Scott, like he's in the labs and he's teaching the Cisco class, but it's hard for us to get in there. And I know we've also got NetLab. I should have put that link in here as well, Virginia Western's NetLab environment. And the cyber range, should your professor provide that to you. But if they don't, guess what? You can go into these environments and build out your own lab, which are very good talking points as well. And then technical podcasts, a very important piece, not only with the job hunt in IT, but just overall very important in IT, is staying up to date with all the technical changes, challenges, what's going on in the environment, what's going on in the industry, how the industry is shifting. The podcasts are, and other news outlets are the best way to stay up to date with all of that information. And that's the end of my slide deck. So if there are any questions, it looked like I saw the thing popping up every now and then. So it looked like there were some questions that came up.
Yes, there are, Doug. I've got quite a few questions queued up, and I'm hoping we'll get a few more. Let's start with a pretty simple one. Is it possible to ask too many questions in an interview?
So you'll want to be cognizant of the time. So let's say, a recruiter or the interviewer says, okay, yep, we're going to have you meeting, for an hour. Make sure you don't go over that hour. I've seen interviews, they end, earlier because the interviewers may leave time for the questions, like whether it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Don't, take advantage of the time that you're given. If they try to end the interview early, say, no, you know what? I've got some questions that I would like to ask. So if they give you an hour, take up that hour.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm juggling kittens now. They're really starting to pour in. So education level, can you talk a little bit about education and jobs? For instance, what jobs are good after 2 years and associates? Do I need to move on to get a bachelor's or a master's?
For the most part, what I've seen, and it varies from organization, but even having a 2-year degree will still get you in as an analyst position. You'll be able to showcase what you can do. Typically what I've seen is that when you want to get up into like the management positions, that's where I've seen like requirements for like, having a bachelor's degree or even a master's degree. But, doing if you love being in the technical weeds per se, I don't want to say, oh yeah, an associate's will be just fine, but the educational requirement isn't as stringent for the very deep technical positions. for the most part.
All right, thank you. So how does having a job all the way through school look to an interviewer?
So what I've seen is that sets you away from, like, all right, let's look at it from an internship perspective. You've got students who, they go to school and, they knock out their classes, but they don't gain the experience in the industry. When you have a job while you're in school, it shows that, yeah, it's like think of it like an extracurricular activity. I mean, that's a big component of, you were in school, you were working, you were gaining experience. And the other thing is, I know, like, I've hired interns that, yeah, they were a barista at a cafe, but they were in a program for, cybersecurity. So what that said to me was, okay, you're learning the foundations of cybersecurity. You were working while you were learning, and you were working on your, customer service skills, because that's what they put it as. They were like, yeah, I was in front of the customers all the time. I had to deal with customers, de-escalation of some instances, and they were able to talk to that. So that lets us know that, they've gained some experience in a workplace setting through, different situations while going to school. And that kind of, seeing that on a resume, it does show, like, the character, like, wow, okay, this person, they were able to manage. So it shows good time management of going to work, going to class, getting them both done.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna change gears just a little bit. This one actually came from our fantastic dean, Amy White, and it seems like a good time to throw this one in. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path, Doug? How did you get there? Was the path always clear to you?
That is a good question. No, it was not at the beginning. I knew what I wanted to do. But for a long time, I did hold a position where, I would do, like, when I got into digital forensics, it wasn't something that my job required me to do. And it took a long time for my job to recognize what I like to do. I had to do my job of what I started out as a help desk technician. In my post school, like, I started out as a help desk technician and worked my way up. But I still jumped into, I liked helping out my team. And even if they were more senior than I was, if I can help them out and had the time, I would definitely do it. But I would also, work on my own passion, which was digital forensics. And I also just showed how that would help out within the company. But sometimes there were times where it seemed like short-sighted, like, hey, Doug, we just want you to do this, so, help desk. And it was, but they asked what do you want to do in 5 years? And it was, of course, I'd say management. It really wasn't what I wanted to do. So I lied to myself. But they're like, okay, 5 years. Yeah, we'll get you into management. It didn't happen. It was like 9 years later, I was still a system administrator, but I loved it. Because during that course, I did change my mind, and I said, you know what, I wouldn't want to get into management. It wasn't the type of company that I wanted to get into management, but I was able to change, and I was able to stay on my technical path. Now, fast forward to where I am at 1901 Group, I had my path set of what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be in cybersecurity, a leader in cybersecurity for the company, and then also build out a team in cybersecurity, and then also lead that team. And so that, I know that was my 5-year goal, and I would say that I'd met that at my current company now.
Okay, great. I like this one, so I'm just bouncing around in some of these questions. So I've got one question specifically about resumes. I've got a bachelor's of science in music, received many awards in music, president of Guitar Club, multiple honors recitals, elected to honors quartet. Do those things belong in my resume?
So It depends on the job that you're going for. I would, yeah, and that's the key there. And this is what I would do. Yes, it should be, because you want to show it off. I mean, if you're going for a position that requires that kind of a skill set, definitely keep it in there. Have it like as your base resume. And if you're going for a position within IT, or, it just see how you could tailor your base resume for that position with the skill set that you've learned in school, and also with the skill set that you've learned outside in IT. But yeah, because you'll want to make it, like I said, with like kind of like the buzzwords, they do look for that. So, if you're applying for like a cybersecurity position, but you only have like, it's great achievements with in music, but it's like okay, so what can we do with that though? Because it may be overlooked due to another resume that has more of the targeted skill set. So I say, keep those in your base resume, and then if you have to target a resume for a position, specific position, target it for that.
Great. The two questions that kind of follow the same idea, so I'll give them both to you. Typically, how technically difficult are interviews, and is there such thing as a working interview?
There are, well, all right. So technically, they can be as tough as the position may require. And that's where it also comes into the content on your resume being fair game. Let's say on your resume, you embellish a little bit and say that, you set up multiple VPNs, site-to-site VPNs, things of that nature. If you're going for a mid-level position, they may really dig into, how you set it up, and they want the details, the nitty-gritty. But for an analyst position, from what I've seen, like the entry-level positions, it touches on, the questions touch on the foundations of IT. So, if you're going for like a help desk position, can you tell us, tell us your process to identify an issue or identify the solution to an issue that a user may have on a computer. If you've done this a lot, like let's even say that you've done this, because you're the family IT person, you just talk to your process. You're going to be like, wow, this is not that hard. If it's for a position that you have very little experience in, it can be quite difficult to go through that interview. And the second question, so there are working interviews. I know in the past I've done interviews where they're like, hey, outline like a cloud environment for us, and how would you separate those your networks within them, or your VPCs, and just talking through that and doing like a whiteboard session. I know with some development positions, they may have you write, not like it has to be the most beautiful code ever, but they want to see how you write out your code to see how you follow your process, and do you understand the foundation, or like do you understand what your code is to do? And I know what I've done for some of our positions is I will hand over a snippet of like output from an intrusion detection system, and I'll say, just look at this and tell me what you see, and point out, what is this, and what do you see going on? And so it's kind of like an not open-ended, because we know what's on that in that output, but we want to see what can you see it. So working interviews, they're out there. And like I said, the interviews can be as difficult as the position may require it.
Great. You talked a little bit about, we'll call it the alphabet soup of certifications. How would someone pinpoint exactly which certifications might be most beneficial for a specific goal they have in mind?
Well, let's say like the specific goal is getting your foot into the door, getting that position at a company. Most of the time, if they don't do this is odd. But they would put up their desired certifications. So let's say they have, but a lot of them may be ambiguous, such as desired certifications, Cisco certifications. Okay, well, look at the Cisco path. And if you don't have any Cisco certs, start at the beginning. Um, I know for ours, we would put things like, Security Plus, especially for an entry level position, doing something like a CISSP, that's a Certified Information System Security Professional. Putting that kind of certification for an entry level or for an analyst position, that's overdoing it. And that you should question that job post if they're looking for that for an entry level. But look at what the certs that the job post is asking for. See if there is a path for those certs, and start at the beginning.
Thanks. All right, here's one I actually hear really often particularly from our older students in classes. This particular student, I'm thinking of a career field change, currently in public service related field for over 17 years, wanting to move into IT. When people look at my resume, see that my time in current field, is it going to hurt me getting into a brand new field? And yeah, so address this from a broader point of students that are making that big career change 10, 15, 20 years into their first career.
So what I've done is, yes, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. Having that big career change, it's great. And what you do is you use that previous experience and you talk to it. Because like I said, especially in our field, it's, there was a saying that, you can train the tech. So you get somebody in the field, in a position, you can train them. You can train them how to use the technology. You can't train the behavior. So it's the, if you've had tons of experience in a previous field or in a different field and you want to make that sharp right and jump in IT, take the experience that you've gained from your classes so you can talk to that. Put that in there, what you've done, especially if it pertains to the job post. And then talk about, it's like, hey, during my tenure at this in my field prior to IT, I would do this. You could talk to how you've improved processes, talked about how the various situations that you've been in. If you've had management in those positions, management can span different, facets of IT because it's all about the people, right? So talk about what you've done in your prior field before you jumped into IT, but also take the experience that you're getting in these classes, put that on there, and make sure that you can talk to it in good detail to say, hey, yeah, I'm learning, and this is what I've learned, and this is what I've done with what I've learned.
All right. Next few questions about certifications. Do employers help with certifications after hire, or is it usually the responsibility of the employee?
Yes. So it's most employees or most employers will say, yep, you come in for hire, you're hired within the first X amount of days, they want you to get the cert. Now they may not say, oh, hey, by the way, here's all these books and all this material for you that you could use to study. They may do that. Some of them may not. They may expect you to go out and get your own material and study, self-study. And then they may say, oh, and by the way, we'll reimburse you once you pass the exam. I know that's so. I know for my team and actually, what we've done is people have gone for a certification and they've been reimbursed for the cost of the exam. So that's generally how the companies will help out. And especially for those foundational certs, they'll definitely help you out with getting those. Now, when it comes to like the much bigger certs, like the CISSPs, the big CCIEs, things like that, you'll have to be ready to do some negotiation on those. But yeah, generally, job employers will help out with that. And another thing to note, write that down as your question to ask in your, in your interview.
Thank you. Do employers generally prefer a BS or certifications?
That one's that one's kind of funny. A lot of them now, a lot of job posts now will say, uh, they may say BS in, say information security, but then they follow up with or similar experience, or experience or compensating experience. So you could say, I mean, I have a BS in that field. However, I have that experience because I've been doing information security for years now, and so I have industry experience. So if they do call for that, make sure that you're for like an educational experience, or a BS, or a master's. Make sure that if you don't have it, make sure that you can follow up with, but I've had many years in that field, and my experience should compensate for that.
Great. Should we list all certifications on a resume, even if they don't pertain to the job we're applying for?
No, that violates the tip of targeting the position. So what you'll want to do, and especially if that list exceeds your resume of 2 pages. So what you'll want to do is, cut that list down for the position that you're going for. If the certifications are relatively, if they're relatively, if they kind of align to that to the position, put them down. But then also, keep it as in the back of your mind for, when you're asked, so what do you do in your spare time? And you can say, oh, well, I've done this, and I'm certified in that, and certified in that. And even though it's not in your resume, it's still a good talking point, because it's like, well, my resume is targeted for that. And what you can also do, I'm going to go against what I just said. Remember, your resume should be targeted for the position, especially when you're putting it in for like on the job boards or on the site, because that's what the recruiter gets, and that's what the interviewer, initially receives. But let's say you get to the interview, take those other, take that other copy with all the other certifications on there, just in case, you're asked about, so what do you do? And it's like, well, I did bring this other copy of my resume, which has these other certifications listed out here. And you can also use that as a reference as well. And you can say, hey, just as a supplement, here's my, my base resume, if you will. It's not specifically targeted for the position, but it does talk more or holistically about the person that you are interviewing. And they do appreciate that.
Great. All right. 2 things. One, I've got only 1 question left on my list, which is why I've called last call for questions. We actually have plenty of time for questions for Doug, but you guys gotta post them out there so I can get them up. I don't want us to all just stare at each other. Now on to the next question. Doug, how formal or informal should you be in an interview?
Let's see. Remember, your interview, especially when you're being interviewed by somebody at the company, not a phone interview, like whether it's virtual or in person, that first impression, of course, is crucial to the interview. So dressing up and looking very presentable. Now, you can also do research on the company and try, but you'll have to at least know people in the company to gauge how you should dress. But I always prefer, you're never going to have any problem. You're not even going to think about it if you dress, pretty formal for the interview. You'll want to look good, look formal. That way it doesn't distract the interviewers from you, because, that is, you're given that time slot to talk about what you can do and what you bring to the company. Because that first impression, when they see it, they use that as a gauge of how will this person, do in front of a customer. So, showing up in shorts to an interview or something like that, if especially in IT and in the industry, it's not going to go over well for you. Now, if you're in a virtual interview, you can cut some corners there because it should be, top half, right? So a nice shirt, nice, but you can rock out with shorts as long as, your camera doesn't fall and show shorts or your pajamas. But definitely think about that first impression that you want to leave, and you don't want them to think about what you were wearing. Because, there's that generally that question of, were they presentable? Did they leave a good first impression? And you don't want them to say, oh, but you know what? They wore like a t-shirt with all this stuff going on and shorts or whatever.
All right. And I'm just going to throw in my own 2 cents as someone who was a hiring manager for as many years as Doug has been an adult, I think, because I'm old. Always overdress. I mean, tails in a top hat might come across a little weird, but trying to look like you really want the job, that's not a bad thing. Right. I mean, temper it with some common sense. But when we look at people, we want people that want the job. That's why he talks about doing some research ahead of time. And the same applies to how you present yourself when you get there. Back to Doug. How many individuals are usually being interviewed for positions?
That depends on how many. Of course, how many people actually jump on the positions. But it can range from 2 to 20 to 30. I mean, we've had instances where we've had so many, at 1901 Group, we've had so many people jump on open positions that were viable candidates that we had to, it was almost like an interviewing sprint, or not a sprint, like it was like speed dating, but with interviewing. And it was, the time slots were kind of short, but we had to interview so many people. I think we actually made it like an interviewing event for like 2 days. So it can be, it generally depends on how many people apply for the position. But the other side of that, sometimes, there are multiple interviewers for one interviewee. So you may go into an interview, don't expect a one-on-one. You may get a one-on-one with the recruiter, but those are usually over the phone. Now, when you go into an interview, you're generally interviewed by 3 to 4 people. And I know at 1901 Group, we've done it where somebody's being interviewed and they, for one position, and they show that they have some interest in cybersecurity, and, oh, well, we've got, Doug, our director, he's here, and let's get him in. And if he's got some time, he can come in and ask some questions. And I've just, jumped in on some interviews here and there. And it's like, hello. It's like, so I see here, I ask some questions. And then after the interview is over, I give my feedback to the interviewers about what I saw. And that speaks, volumes as well, because that goes on, it's like, hey, they did well here, and they have this, they expressed interest in this position as well, or in this field, even though it's not what they applied for. But, that's always an open thought, because that person would still be in my mind of, oh yeah, I remember interviewing you. And then you talk about it, and what have you done since, in cybersecurity since then? So that was one of the, that's one of the interviews that I recall having to just jump in on, and, scary security guy coming in on you. But yeah,
I've got a bunch of people pinging in now asking about money. What's a good entry level to mid-level range pay?
So I get varying answers on that. And that's so what is it? I think there are sites now where you can go out and you can look at what the market value is for specific positions within a specific area. And I'd have to look those up, because there are sites out there that tell you, oh, you want to be a help desk technician in Southwest Virginia, you should expect this range. Use that to your advantage, not at the interview, but once you're given an offer. It's kind of odd to say, hey, so you got me here for this interview. What how much do you expect, how much am I expected to be paid to do this? That's why when you're doing your research and you're asking the question, you want to ask those questions based on, what kind of work am I expected to do? What are the expectations throughout, like the first 90, first 120, first days and then first year? Because, then when they come back and they say, hey, we would like to offer you this much. When you look up and say, okay, well, does that fall into the range of, I guess the expectation, or does that fall well below? And then, use that to your advantage to say, well, I'd prefer to get this much. In the rare occasion, and I'm sorry, before I say that, you'll also want to do that because in the rare occasion, you may be asked, how much are you expecting? And that question would generally come from the recruiter. The recruiter may ask, so what are you expecting as far as compensation for this position? That catches a lot of people off guard. So be prepared to answer that. Think of the figure that you want to make, because what they'll do is they'll take that and then they look at to see, how does that fit within the range? And while I've been talking about that, I saw somebody ask about range for our area. So like, I'll just talk to what we do for like 1901 group. Like we work out of the Blacksburg area, the Southwest Virginia area, even as far as Abingdon now. The cost of living, of course, is much lower in our area than like say the DC area. So if you look up cybersecurity positions in DC or like the Washington DC area and you see those ranges, you'd have to be pretty top notch. I mean, to expect those kinds of ranges in this area, because like I said, they're gauged for the cost of living and other factors in this area.
Thank you. All right, here's a fairly specific one. How much of the training or work experience would you include on a resume if you already have an AAS in legal studies, paralegal, and a notary public? When it would be pushing the 2-page limit on a resume, but it's a good skill set to have and shows your ability to handle confidentiality.
I would put that on there, but try to be brief about it. And so like if you're a notary public, definitely, note that in there, put that in there. What is it? And then, put in how, what is it, when you were last certified, because I believe notary public, like you've got to go through recertification. But try to tailor the resume to the position, but still, yeah, that kind of stuff it's very important to have.
All right, this one comes from one of our advisors. Good question. If a student is just looking to start their IT education pathway and are on the fence about either an applied certification type path or going towards a true computer science degree, what sort of guidance would you offer them in the decision-making process?
So I look at that two ways. One, from personal experience, I would say focus on the CS program and get that done. And I say that because I know when I started, I did take a break and I went for certs, but I had that lingering feeling of, something that I still needed to accomplish. So I know, like I went back to school. I went to Virginia Western and then I went to Radford, graduated, and I was done with it. So I came out with like, I had my certs and I had my degree that I'd been working on, that I'd initially put on hold. So when I have students come to me and say, I'm thinking about, splitting the path, I say, just focus on the studies, because, getting that is important. You want to have that piece of paper. Because, you know, when you have it on your resume, oh, I went and I took some credits here, but that was like years ago, or, you know, you're going to be asked about that. So what do you know, are you going back? Are you currently in school? But when you say that, oh, I have my, you know, my AAS, you know, that shows that you started something, you finished it. And so that's what you want to show, that you have the initiative, that, yeah, you started it and finished it. But I always steer my students in continuing the program to completion. Definitely use your, use your free time to study on the certs and pursue the certs. But stay in school and get it done.
How do security clearances help your chances? And will the employer cover those expenses?
You may see a lot of positions require the ability to get security clearances. That's a whole different subject that, man, yeah, they're good to be able to get. If you already have a security clearance, that's great too. Where I wouldn't, so my thing about that is, if you already have a security clearance, put it on your resume, but put it on the resume that you applied directly at the company. I'm kind of weary about, seeing people put up on their resume and they put it up on LinkedIn. Oh, I have a top secret clearance. You may do yourself a little bit more harm than good, because that's, you set yourself up as a target for, malicious actors. But when you apply directly to the company and you have on your resume that you have that you already have a security clearance, that looks really good, because it shows that you've been investigated, you've been adjudicated, and the company. And I will tell you, in 1901 Group, clearances are required for certain positions, but the company handles that, the cost. Now, where you would come into play, of course, is your time in filling out the, the equips, the SF-85s, SF-86, dealing with the interviewers, because they're going to ask you a lot of questions, and they're going to ask your family members a lot of questions. So you want to make sure that if you're applying for a position that says security clearance required, or the requirement to obtain a security clearance, make sure that you can, that you are able to get it. And that goes on to a whole different subject where, it's like, but, you may have a history, but, adjudicators look at things like, how far back, did that happen? If you did something bad, are you still doing that bad thing? No. Okay, well, that's good. How long ago was it? Oh, it was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, you would have to disclose it still, but they do take the time into account. But you're not having to pay to get your own clearance, and that is actually, you can't go and pay to get your own security clearance. It has to have a requirement for you to get it.
Great. Okay. When negotiating a salary, it's always about money with these folks. When negotiating a salary, or if the offered compensation is lower than expected, does asking for higher compensation put off a recruiter? What would be the proper way to go about this?
Be very nice and ask nicely. No, it doesn't put off a recruiter. What I've done in the past is that it lets the recruiter know that you're serious, and you're serious because you've done your research. So you know what to expect, and you back it up with. So like if they say, oh, well, we're going to offer you this much, and you say, well, I've looked it up, and the market in this area is, this much. But you wouldn't say how much the market is. You would say, but I've researched the market and I'd prefer this much, or this is what I feel I should be able to make. And then I would also say, don't make it like a flat figure, like like I want to go for 60,000. Make it like some odd, like I want to go for 65, 498. Something like that, because it also, I've heard some recruiters talk about, when you do something like that, it shows that you've done, okay, so you have an expectation of like what you have to pay, you know, the cost of living, bills, family, all that kind of stuff. And you like put off this kind of feeling like you've done, like you manage your money to the point where you kind of know what you want to make. And even if you do that, they're still going to they're going to round it up, right? So, but they may also counter with something lower than what you expect. Just be ready for that. But just know that usually when they counter with something lower, it would still be higher than the initial offer. Now, if you get what you've requested, if they say, okay, that sounds good, and you're offered the position, be prepared to work for it. I mean, you're already going to work for it, but just know that, hey, you show up day one working hard, they're going to say, yeah, we're glad that, you know, they countered. And because think about it, you'd be working for the same, but if you just taken that initial offer, you'd be working the same for less pay. So don't be afraid to ask, but just be cognizant of how you ask and, you know, and what you counter with, and make sure you come back with, you know, with just have that data in mind as to why you're asking for a higher compensation.
All right, so this is a good one. Would knowing multiple languages be better, or would a recruiter prefer an individual to know and specialize in just one or two languages?
Oh, yeah, that's an easy one. Knowing multiple languages is great. Yeah, that's hands down. I mean, you would want to be show, you know, that's how you stand out. Showcase. Put, you know, yes, I know. Put that in there, and you don't have to be all specific with. Oh, I learned this, you know, language doing, you know, because I spent time in this country doing this and that. No, just put, you know, languages or a sufficient in the following languages. Bullet point, you know, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. And that does help out. I mean, because there are positions where you are going to, you know, I was talking about like languages that you speak. Still, same thing. Put them down. But say like, remember your skill set. Beginner, sufficient, or beginner, you know, intermediate or expert in these languages. But like I said, when you put that in there, be prepared to talk to it.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, to clarify, Doug has said exactly what I've heard repeatedly also, which is multiple languages, both as a programmer and as a speaker. Multiple foreign languages, particularly if you have some level of fluidity, is wildly useful and desired, and you want to mention those. But also with languages, as Diane puts in, there's an expectation in IT that you're going to be relatively fluid in a number of languages.
Yep.
Programming, so don't underestimate that. Doug, I think this is going to be our last one for the day here. If a recruiter asks you what you'd like to make, is it okay to ask them what they're willing to offer?
It's okay, but you might sell yourself short there because they put the ball in your court to give them the answer. So go crazy. Well, don't go too crazy, but tell them what you expect. But like I said, be prepared to talk to why you expect that much. But also that comes from doing your research, gauging how much you should make in the area within the field, within the area, and with what you bring to the company. Your experience and you as an individual, you're invaluable to whatever company you go to. So, you know, if they ask you how much you feel you should make, know the answer to that question before you go to the interview, before you apply for the position. That way, I mean, you come back, snap with that answer, and they're like, whoa, okay. And then if they, you know, respond with something lower, it may not be far lower than what you expect. But also, like I said, that's because you've done your research. But don't be afraid to answer that question. I didn't lose you all, did I?
You did. So there we go.
Oh, okay, cool.
Thank you, Doug, for being our first speaker. It didn't go quite as badly as I feared. I pushed
Great.
badly here, but not too many. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and you did a great job of asking questions. Fabulous number of questions, really useful. Diane, anything you'd like to say?
I'd just like to say the same thing. It went great. I want you to join us in our other 5 in the series. And if you have other topics that you would like us to put in our series, we are going to continue this series in the spring. We've already started talking about putting together some of the discussions. And so if you have any interest, let me know. I'm sure Doug would be willing to answer some questions for you. If you have specific questions about certifications at Virginia Western, things of that sort, Jeff and I would be there. And I have to say once more that we would not have our program if we didn't have the wonderful support of Amy White. So everybody say yay on the count of 3. Ready? Yay! There we go.
Yay.
Thank you for joining us. I hope the night was worth your time. I certainly think it was. And we will get this posted up with his slides. Doug, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Excellent. How are we going to get the slides out to everyone?
Well, you sent me the slides, and
Yep.
can you just post them where we post the link by where the link is?
As I figure out where I'm going to post the links, I will also post the slides there as well. Give me a few hours to think of the best way to go at that, and we'll get it all out there for everyone.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good
See you
evening.
next time.
Thanks, guys.